I'm Bonnie Lopez. I'm 72 years old, and I'm sitting in my car in the Lincoln Square Cinema parking lot recording this on my phone because I just walked out of a movie crying my eyes out. Not for the story on screen, but because for the first time in my life, I went to see it completely alone. The feeling is so huge, I have to tell someone right now. Let me explain. You see, I have this full, beautiful, loud life. 48 years with Charles, 5 kids, 7 grandkids. I'm a retired teacher. I volunteer. I craft. My whole identity is being there for others. My house in Bellevue is never, ever silent. And I realized just yesterday that this life I built was also a fortress, a wall of constant doing to avoid ever just being. I regret never giving myself permission to be truly, gloriously alone. I missed out on knowing myself. Let me tell you what happened. It started last Tuesday, pure chaos. My daughter dropped off 2 grandkids for a quick 3 hours. They were running circles. Charles was right there, holding a plumbing invoice, asking me if I'd called the guy. My phone was buzzing on the counter, the volunteer group text blowing up about bake sale logistics. The noise wasn't just sound, it was a pressure in my chest. I felt this pure animal panic, a screaming need for the world to just stop. In that frenzy, I did something reckless. I grabbed my phone, opened the theater app, and bought 1 ticket for a 2:15 p.m. show the next day. 1. It felt like a secret, a rebellious act. The guilt hit me the next day. I told Charles I was going to run errands. Me, Bonnie Lopez, the patient one, the honest one. The guilt was instant and hot. I felt like a teenager sneaking out. Driving to the theater, my hands were slick on the wheel. I was convinced this was selfish, a ridiculous mistake. I almost turned the car around 3 times, but I kept driving. Walking through the mall alone felt like walking a plank. I was sure everyone saw a lonely old woman. I marched up to the counter anyway. I bought a small popcorn, just for me, and pushed through the theater doors into the cool, dark silence. The theater was nearly empty. I took a center seat. The previews started, and my mind unleashed. What if Charles calls? What if there's an emergency? This is so selfish. I should be organizing my woodworking tools. I should call my sister. The internal monologue was a screaming match, louder than any trailer. Then the movie began. Big explosions, quips, but I couldn't follow it. My thoughts were a frenetic checklist of a lifetime. Lesson plans, packed lunches, craft fairs, grandkids' birthdays. I saw my 72 years not as a story, but as a series of tasks. For Charles, for my kids, for my students. Who was I underneath all that doing? And then, about 20 minutes in, the film had a quiet moment. Just the hero, alone on screen, thinking. And in that silence, my own mind finally went quiet. The frantic voice shut off. It was a sudden, profound stillness I hadn't known in decades. And then a different voice started speaking, not with lists, with memories, with feelings. I wasn't watching a movie anymore. I was witnessing my own life unfold in the dark. The film built to its big climax, the hero making a grand sacrifice. And I didn't see a superhero. I saw myself. For 72 years, sacrificing my quiet, my solitude, my own questions on the altar of duty and love. I saw every time I said yes when I needed to say, let me think. The tears came then, not sad tears, tears of profound, shocking recognition. They just rolled down my face in the dark. The credits rolled. I sat there. I wiped my eyes, and I walked out into the light a different person. I realized I'd been afraid of my own company. I filled every second so I'd never have to ask, Bonnie, are you okay? What do you want? That woman in the dark, the introverted girl who loved getting lost in a woodworking project. The patient teacher who found joy in a single student's breakthrough. She's still in here. I just hadn't visited her in years. And listen, this isn't about being alone. It's about becoming complete. Loneliness is a hollow feeling. Solitude is a full one. It's the most important conversation you'll ever have. I have Charles. I have my wonderful, bustling family. But I need to know myself to truly be there for them. That hour alone wasn't a withdrawal from my life. It was an investment in it. So here I am, in my car, heart still pounding. And here is my advice from a 72-year-old woman who just introduced herself to herself. So here is my advice from a 72-year-old woman who just introduced herself to herself. Schedule your solitude like it's the most critical appointment you have. You see, I didn't just walk out of that theater feeling peaceful. I felt urgent, like I had to make up for lost time. I drove home, and the whole way my mind was clear. Not quiet, but clear. It was buzzing with a new kind of energy. I walked into the house, and Charles was right where I'd left him, reading the paper at the kitchen table. He looked up and said, "How were the errands?" And I didn't lie. I put my purse down and I said, "Charles, I didn't run errands. I went to a movie by myself." He took his reading glasses off, just stared at me for a second. A movie? Alone? He wasn't angry, he was confused. My Charles, my partner of 48 years, couldn't compute it. In his world, you go to the movies with someone. You run errands with someone. That's what we do. Yes, I said. My heart was pounding again, but it was a good pound. I just needed some time, just me. He nodded slowly. He's a good man, a kind man. He said, "Okay, was it a good movie?" And I laughed. I actually laughed, because I couldn't even tell him the plot. "It was wonderful," I said. And that was that. He went back to his paper. But something had shifted, a tiny crack in the routine. I had claimed an hour for just Bonnie. Not Mrs. Lopez the teacher, not Mom, not Grandma, not even Charles's wife. just me. And let me tell you, that crack, it starts to widen. The next week, I was in my workshop, the little shed out back where I do my woodworking. I was supposed to be fixing a rocking horse for my youngest grandson, but I just stood there, surrounded by the smell of pine and varnish, my tools hanging neatly on the wall. And I didn't start working. I just sat on my stool for 20 minutes. I listened to the birds outside. I felt the quiet settle in my bones. I didn't think about the rocking horse. I thought about the first bookshelf I ever built, how proud I was. I'd forgotten that feeling. That's the thing. When you start listening, you remember who you were before the world started telling you who you should be. Then came the real test. My daughter called. "Mom, can you take the kids on Thursday? I have a dentist appointment." And the old Bonnie, the one from 2 weeks ago, would have said yes instantly. Of course, that's my job. That's my joy. But the new Bonnie, the one who met herself in a dark theater, she took a breath. She felt that familiar pressure in her chest, and she said, "You know what, honey? I can't this Thursday. I have a commitment." A commitment to what? To sitting on my back porch with a cup of tea? To absolute nothing. It felt terrifying to say it, and then it felt powerful. My daughter was silent for a beat. "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll figure it out." And she did. The world didn't end. The kids were fine. And I had my Thursday. Here's what I'm learning, fast and hard. All those years of crafting, of volunteering, of teaching, they were expressions of me, but they were also places to hide. If I'm always making something for someone or helping someone, I don't have to ask what I need. If my hands are always busy, they can't sit still and tremble with the fear of an empty afternoon. I built a beautiful life. I love my family. I love the noise of them. But I was using their noise as a soundtrack to drown out my own questions. So I've started small. I go to the coffee shop on Main Street and I sit for 30 minutes. I don't bring a book. I don't bring my knitting. I just watch people. I let my mind wander. And sometimes it wanders to hard places, to regrets, to things I wish I'd done differently for myself. That's part of the conversation too. You don't just get the good stuff. You have to sit with the rest of it. Last Tuesday, I did it again. I went to a movie, a little indie film about an old painter. I went alone. I bought my popcorn. I sat in the dark. And this time, the noise in my head didn't start. It was just quiet. From the first preview, I watched the whole film. I got lost in it. And when I walked out, I didn't feel like I'd discovered a secret. I felt like I'd come home. That's the realization, the crisis. I'm 72. I have maybe 10, 15 good years left if I'm lucky. And I just started the most important relationship of my life, the one with myself. It's frantic, this feeling, like I have to cram a lifetime of self-knowledge into whatever time I have left. It's a roller coaster. One day I'm giddy with the freedom of it. The next, I'm heartbroken that I waited so long. But I'm not stopping, because that hour of solitude, it's not empty time. It's fertile ground. It's where I finally hear my own thoughts. And you know what? I'm pretty interesting company. And you know what? I'm pretty interesting company. But that realization, it comes with a cost, a heavy one. Because once you start seeing yourself clearly, you can't unsee what you've missed. The crash came a few days later. I was in the kitchen making Charles his usual turkey sandwich for lunch. He was reading the paper. The sun was coming in. It was a perfectly normal, quiet Tuesday. And I looked at him, my Charles, with his reading glasses perched on his nose, his hair all silver now. And a memory hit me so hard I had to put the knife down. It was from maybe 30 years ago. The kids were all in school. I had a rare free afternoon, a weekday. I remember standing in this same kitchen, feeling that same restless pressure in my chest. I thought, I could go see a movie. The idea was a tiny, bright spark, and then I immediately stamped it out. Because who goes to a movie alone in the middle of the day? What would Charles think? What would the kids think if they found out? It was an absurd, selfish idea. So I didn't go. I stayed home. I organized the pantry. I folded laundry. I filled the silence with chores. Standing there 30 years later making that sandwich, I saw that younger version of myself so clearly. She was tired. She was hungry for just 1 hour of quiet, of a story that wasn't her own. And she was so afraid of what it would mean to take it. Charles, I said. My voice sounded strange. He looked up. Do you remember that spring when Tommy was in first grade and the twins were in that all-day soccer camp? I think it was 1994. He squinted, thinking. Vaguely, why? I almost went to a movie one afternoon, by myself. He chuckled, going back to his paper. Well, why didn't you? We could have used a break from those kids. That was it. That was his whole reaction. A chuckle, a casual question. He wouldn't have cared. He probably would have been happy for me. The barrier wasn't him. It wasn't the kids. It was me. I had built the fortress all by myself. I didn't go, I said, more to myself than to him. I organized the pantry instead. He just nodded, not really listening. And that was the moment that broke me. Not a big moment, a small, quiet, devastating one. I had been my own jailer for decades. I stood there with the mayonnaise knife in my hand, and I felt the weight of all those lost afternoons. Not just the movies, the quiet coffees I never had, the walks I never took, the thoughts I never finished. I put the sandwich in front of Charles and I walked out of the kitchen. I went to my bedroom and I closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed we've shared for 48 years and I cried. I cried for that woman in 1994 who was so afraid of her own company. I cried for all the versions of me that came after her, who kept building the walls higher, busier, louder. The teacher who stayed late to grade papers instead of going home to an empty house. The grandma who volunteered for every school pickup so her calendar would stay full. I'd thought I was being selfless. I'd thought I was being strong, but it was a kind of cowardice. I was hiding in plain sight in the middle of my own wonderful, noisy life. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I went out to my workshop. I didn't turn on the big light, just the small lamp over my bench. My tools hung in the shadows. My current project, a jewelry box for my eldest granddaughter, sat half finished. I ran my hand over the smooth, sanded wood, and I remembered the first thing I ever built. I was 8, a little birdhouse with my grandfather. He let me hammer every nail. It was lopsided. The hole was too big. No bird ever used it. But I was so proud of it. I would sit and just look at it. When did I stop doing that? When did every project become a thing to finish, to give away, to check off a list? When did the joy of making something just for the sake of making it get buried under the need for it to be useful, to be for someone? I sat on my stool in the quiet dark, and I asked myself the hardest question. Bonnie, what do you want? Right now, with no one to please but you. The answer was so simple, it was stupid. I want to sit here. I don't want to build anything. I just want to sit. So I did. I sat in the dark with my half-finished projects and my memories, and I felt the loss, not as a dramatic tragedy, but as a dull, persistent ache, like I'd missed the main event of my own life because I was too busy working the concession stand. I thought about my 5 kids. I loved them more than anything. But did they ever see me, just me? Or did they only ever see Mom, the reliable one, the one who had the Band-Aids and the snacks and the patience? Did I ever show them it was okay to be quiet, to be alone, to not have a plan? I don't think I did. I showed them how to build a fortress. I think I might have taught them to be afraid of the quiet, too. That's the real regret. It's not just about the movies I didn't see. It's about the person I didn't let myself become. The one who could sit in silence without guilt. The one who could say, I need an hour, without it feeling like a confession. I stunted my own growth for 72 years. The sun started to come up. A gray light filtered into the workshop. I was stiff and cold, but the crying was done. The pity party was over. What was left was just the facts. I had wasted a lot of time. I had been afraid. I had hidden. But I wasn't hiding now. I was sitting in the wreckage of that realization, and for the first time, it was quiet. Not a peaceful quiet, a raw, honest, empty quiet. The kind where there are no more excuses left. You're just alone with what you've done and what you haven't. I stood up, my knees cracked. I looked at my hands, veiny, spotted, old. They'd held so many children, graded so many papers, built so many things for other people. It was time they built something for me. It was time they built something for me. Not a gift, not a project for the craft fair, something just for the pleasure of making it, with no purpose at all. That's what I started with, a simple wooden box, no hinges, no fancy joints, just 4 sides and a bottom, sanded so smooth it felt like silk. I didn't rush. When my mind started up again, asking, what's it for? Who's it for? I just stop, put the sandpaper down, and sit until the question faded away. It was practice. Practice in being, not doing. Here's what I understand now, sitting here in my car, having finally met myself. All that crafting, that woodworking, that volunteering, it was real. My love for my family is real. My patience as a teacher was real. But I was using those true things to hide from a deeper truth. I was terrified of the empty space. I thought if I stopped moving, I'd disappear. That if I wasn't needed, I wouldn't exist. So I made sure I was always needed. By Charles, by my 5 kids, by my 7 grandkids, by the PTA, by the community center. I built a life so full of love and duty, there was no room for a simple, quiet question. Bonnie, what do you think? That moment in the dark theater, when the hero was alone and my own mind went still, that was the crack in the dam. And what flooded out wasn't emptiness, it was me. The whole complicated, interesting person I'd been too busy to get to know. So my advice is this, and it's urgent. You have to schedule your solitude. You have to defend it like it's the most important meeting on your calendar, because it is. It's a meeting with the CEO of your own life. For you, maybe it's not a movie. Maybe it's a walk without headphones, a coffee at the counter without your phone, 20 minutes in your car before you go into the house after work. But you have to go alone, and you have to sit through the awful, itchy, guilty first part, where your brain screams at you about all the things you should be doing. You sit through that like you'd sit through a boring lecture, because on the other side of that noise is a clarity you can't get anywhere else. Don't wait for a crisis. Don't wait until you're 72 and the pressure in your chest feels like a panic attack in your own kitchen. Do it now, this week. Buy 1 ticket to something. Tell your Charles or your partner or your kids, I'm going out for a bit, just me. They'll be confused. They might even be worried. Do it anyway. You are not being selfish. You are being responsible. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And for years, decades maybe, I've been trying to pour from a cup I never stopped to fill. I have regret. Of course I do. I think of all those Tuesday afternoons I could have had, all those conversations with myself I never started. But here's the hope, and it's real. I'm 72. I have wrinkles and creaky knees and a heart that's seen a lot. But I'm not done. I'm just beginning the most fascinating relationship of my life. And you have even more time than I do. Don't waste it performing a role, even a beautiful one, for an audience. Step off the stage and meet the person you've been all along. This channel, from what I understand, is full of stories like this. People my age and younger, figuring things out later than we'd like, but not too late. If this messy confession from a retired teacher in Bellevue meant something to you, If it made you think I should try that, then I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I'm new to all this, but they tell me it helps these stories reach more people who might need to hear them. And I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment. Tell me, are you afraid of the quiet too? Is there something you've been wanting to do alone but haven't given yourself permission? Just typing it out is a first step. If this resonated, give the video a like. It lets me know this wasn't just me talking to my phone in a parking lot. And share it, maybe with your mom, your friend, your spouse, someone who you think is always busy, but maybe, just maybe, is as tired as I was. Maybe you have a story of your own, a lesson you learned the hard way that could help someone else not stumble so much. There's a way to share it, a form in the description below. Fill it out. Your voice matters. Your hard-won wisdom matters. And if you're looking for a place to start thinking about all this, I found a book helpful recently. It's called Gift from the Sea by Anne Morrow Lindbergh. It's an old book, but it's about a woman seeking solitude, and it made me feel less alone in wanting it. There's a link below if you're interested. But more than any book, just try it. This week, 1 hour, alone, no agenda. See who you meet. Then come back and tell me about her, or him. I'll be here. Probably in my workshop, sanding something for no reason at all. Finally at peace in my own company.